Welcome to the Weekend Handyman. This is part 3 of Project Flatbed 50. What I'm doing is building a scale flatbed F350. It's based on an Axial SCX10 chassis, although it uses Losi mini crawler axles. Last update, I was mostly focused on doing some finishing work on the chassis. I painted the links, the springs, and then cleaned up the rear suspension, added bushings to the rear shackles, and sanded and smoothed everything out so it works like it's supposed to. This time around, I was mostly focused on mounting about 80% of my electronics, aside from an ESC and a battery, which I'll probably get later. Basically what I had to do is I had to make a motor mount and a servo mount. Here, I'll bring you around closer to you get a better look at it. What you're looking at here is the motor mount I made to mount my motor in my gear reduction unit to the chassis. Normally on an SCX10, the motor is of course mounted directly to the transmission in sort of the classic way, similar to like a Traxxas Wrestler or something along those lines. This is just made out of brass. It was one piece that I just bent to fit around the chassis, and then I just drilled all the holes for my servo mount piece, and of course for the motor mount, or for the gear reduction unit to fit through. The actual piece of brass that I used looks like this. This is the actual template I used to cut out from the brass. It was actually, the hardest part was actually just bending it to fit around, since I don't have some sort of a good way besides a vise to do that. The process for making the motor mount was fairly straightforward. This is the original template, and all I did was just place it down on top of my brass that I wanted to use, just like this, and I just outlined it with a red Sharpie, cut it out, and then just bent it into the proper shape. Just took a little bit of manipulating of the final piece to get it to fit, but I got it to work out well. And then the only final change I did is I just shaped it to have a contour that follows the motor to make it look good, as you can see right here. There's also a servo mounted right there. The servo is mounted in two places, of course. One up in the front, and then there's another mount back here that attaches also to my motor mount. What this does is it also it stiffens the motor mount itself and the servo, because without this little piece in here, the servo would be able to rock back and forth, and this motor mount would be able to rock back and forth more than it does. So I had tied them all together, and it's all nicely held together with locking nuts in there. What I also can show you is how I'm going to deliver power from my motor to the transmission. It is going to be via just a Losi MRC, or a mini crawler drive shaft, right from the gear reduction unit straight into the SCX10 chassis. I am hoping this works out well. It should. I do have a 4-to-1 gear reduction unit up here, and then the transmission itself, I believe, is like about a 2-to-1 transfer to gear reduction unit, so hopefully it'll work out well. Now in here right now, I just have an old brush motor from one of my wrestlers. And for final my final motor choice will probably be Team Tekin 35-turn motor. I'm hoping that'll give me enough wheel speed and also have enough torque. This is also the final servo I'm going to use. It is just a really cheap one that I think off of like a Hobby Parts or something like that. It should have plenty of power to turn these tires on here, and is decently fast. Let me show you the steering setup that I had to make. This is what my steering setup is going to look like. I just took a normal servo horn and I actually heated it up and actually bent it down to create a sort of drop Pitman arm effect. And then I just made a short linkage to go down to the steering knuckle down here, and then of course just a drag link to go across to grab the tire. It'll work nicely. Goes back and forth, same amount every way, just like that. The drop Pitman arm actually took a couple tries. Here, I'll show you. These are my other attempts at a drop Pitman arm. I think this was my first one, which was worked out well, but of course, I mean, this servo horn, I didn't really like the look of it. It was kind of small, and it didn't fit on the servo itself. These are a couple of my other attempts. Of course, they just broke. But the final one actually worked out well. It has just enough drop to put a better angle on the steering arm itself, so I didn't have to do any sort of crazy bending on it. In order to also mount the servo, I had to make another cross member to go to the front here for the front mount on the servo. It was fairly straightforward. It's just a straight piece of brass with two 90s to attach to the chassis. Then, like everything else, with the steering links and the motor mount, it's painted nice and black to match the chassis and whatnot, and the look that I'm going for. So that wraps up the work that I have done on the chassis so far. I got the steering and motor mounts finalized. I have the steering links all finalized, and I just have this kind of locked in there right now, so I'll be able to actually mount the body down on it when I actually do work on that. I still need to get the actual motor that I'm going to use, so I'll probably just wait because this motor is fine for mock-up. And other work that I've been doing is have been doing a little bit of work on the front of the body, in between like waiting for this black paint to dry that I used on the motor mounts and whatnot. I'll take a look, or I'll bring it over and show you that too. I had been debating for a while what I wanted to do for a bumper on the front of this truck. I had debated about leaving it completely the way it is now, not doing a single thing. Then I had also debated doing a fully custom bumper. Now what I actually decided on is kind of a combination of the two. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dress up the front of it and just add actual tow hooks that I can hook things to, and then like tie a chain across it to, for sort of that sort of effect and stuff like that. Then of course, I'm going to actually put LEDs in here so all these lights light up and whatnot. This is what I'm going to use for tow hooks. It's just a piece of brass that I heated up and bent around. Of course, I'm going to cut them down to a proper length and recess them into the body, which is actually pretty easy because once I would ground off the little mounts that held this on, I could take this all the way out and actually cut out the holes where the tow hooks would go, which are these right here. And then what I'm going to do is take pieces of brass and then mount it across that part back there to give it some strength. And then I'm going to solder these to it. The way that I got these bends is fairly simple. I took a piece of 2x4 and just nailed 2 nails into it, kind of like that. There's no particular reason why I picked that general spot. It could pretty much be anywhere. And then what you would want to do is take a piece of brass or whatever it is you want to bend, heat it up to the point where it's malleable, and then you can just crank it around in pretty much any angle that you want. Over here, I have a couple different examples of things I've done. There's this, then I have another one of these, and then I have these pieces right here. These are just some of the things that you could do with a simple bender like this. It's not perfect. It took a few tries to actually get shapes that look like this, that are actually pretty accurate to the little plastic ones that came off the truck. If you can see that, they actually match really well. So hopefully they'll look really nice, and of course I'm gonna paint them black to match everything else that I've done, and then just solder them kind of like that on a mount in the back side of the body. So that wraps up the work that I've done on the body so far. Hopefully with next update I'll have a lot more work done on the front of this truck, since now that I have the chassis mostly all worked out and finalized, so I can do good mock-ups on it. I can focus my time more on the body, which force mounting my tow hooks and getting wiring done for the lights and whatnot like that. And then I think I want to paint it next. Now I'm going to use the same colors it is, the same color scheme, but the thing is why I want to paint it, of course, because it's kind of rough and dinged up and whatnot. And of course I want to remove these stickers because they look kind of shitty. And if you just take them off, the paint line between these is not even at all. So I'm going to keep the same paint scheme, but I'm going to clean up the body a lot and then paint it, of course. And then from there, the exterior of the body should actually be all set, and I can move on to the actual interior of the body, which I have had sitting over here for a long time now. And then I can reinstall my marker lights up top and whatnot, and then actually get it mounted on the chassis. And then I can actually then start work on the flatbed, which will end up being the last part I end up working on. So that covers part 3 of Project Flatbed 50. You can subscribe and see future updates.